Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming for our second Workday user group for June. The second one, we're looking to have another one, maybe another one for this year. And what we're essentially looking at is doing something hopefully we're giving to our community, which goes beyond perhaps what you can read. We're looking at real practices that we've been doing and finding, sharing our experiences and highlighting or helping you take your installation further. So without further ado, I shall just... Okay, so we've got 5 topics today, and what we'd like to do, we'd like to get your feedback, because what we want to do is, like I said, drive adoption amongst you and show you some things which perhaps you wouldn't have been exposed to. And so what we've got here, topic 1, which I'm going to start on, is another second part of active dashboards. So we started that in our last one in March. But some of the feedback we got was to go a bit deeper into some of these topics. So I'm going to do a little bit on that. I'm going to show how we can do some forecasting with it and how we can build it a little bit. So then we're going to go over to Phil, the other Phil, and he's going to show us something that he's been working on the last couple of months, which is something which has been enabled by new functionality where we can drive a mass data change without having to do a lot of clicking and copying and pasting and manipulating. Then thirdly, we're going to cover processes in adaptive. This is something that's been around for a long time, but probably doesn't get used much. So we're going to do quite a deep dive in that one with Erica and the rest of us, and how to engage your business users, get people into a dashboard environment, engage infrequent users. And then topic 4 will be Miranda, and she's going to show you a prepayments model, but with a difference. So you'll see the model we built here has it's like a workspace rather than just a screen, and that's one of the themes of what we're going to go through. And finally, we're going to touch on projects. So George is going to do that. So he's going to show how we can use and track projects, almost like a project management tool, but using forecasting and linking to live systems. And finally, we should have enough time, maybe to even 10 minutes, see how we go, where we can respond to chats that come up. So feel free to enter into the chats as you think of things, and then when we get to the end, we can still have a kind of Q&A session amongst us. So just a reminder from last time that we covered these topics, did a deeper dive into cash flow, adding non-financial data, bringing in other systems data, a debt covenant model and loan. We did an IFRS 16 lease management and accounting model. And we looked at business case for active dashboards, and we also did a high-level Office Connect, which I think most of you use. And just touching on here, just some potential future topics. So, and we'd like to get some feedback here, but we've done quite a lot on workforce planning. So things like rosters, gaining variances at employee and pay component level. So not just a cost center budget actuals comparison. Looking at integration deep dive into other areas. There's a future release coming up in September, so we'd probably give a preview, or if it's just come out, we'll go through some of the features of that. And then some like detailed OPEX models, for instance, like travel. And of course, any of your suggestions are welcome. And also something we haven't really touched on much is, you may not be familiar with it, there's an Excel for planning sheet where you can actually enter data into Excel directly into Adaptive. So that's a few areas. So please send in your feedback, and if you're talking to any of us, let us know. There will be a feedback session at the end of this, and an email for it, and a recording of this as well sent to you. So you'll have all of this coming through. We have actually got quite a few people registered for the 60, so that's a really good number. So we're really happy to drive engagement with everyone here. Just so you know the team here, so we've got a great team of solid FP&A professionals, or so they tell me, and as you can see here, there are many people that had a lot of experience within finance departments, and also running adaptive. So I feel that a lot of our consultants are much more able to get into the customer's shoes, and that's what suits adaptive. Adaptive is very much a customer-driven model. It's not meant to be technical. It's not meant to hide or be obscure to get things done, and that's part of what we're looking at today. Okay, so topic one, which is going to be me. I'm just going to do again a short touch on it, just a bit more detail though. So I just want to introduce active dashboards, and we're just taking that word dashboard a little less seriously and seeing it more as a workspace, because we actually see this more and more, that we're building interfaces really for business users primarily, but also any particular persona, executive or so on, to get their job done, whether that's to do budget or do a forecast. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is to build by drag and drop the user interface, and how you can make it very much a not just a visualization tool, but something where you can look at things, do things, and see the impact of that. So we want to bring a focus as well into making changes to hit targets. So I'm going to show you a bit more on the forecast side of things, rather than just the budget, and how you can then interact with that in a forecast text there. So I'm just going to escape out of that and get onto my dashboard system here. So hopefully now you can see my dashboard. So first of all, as you may have seen here, I've got a lot of these tabs here are relevant for budgets. So we have things like building up my budget for a worksheet, and generally with budgets we focus on comparisons between, say, last year, what happened last year. We can use that, so we bring a lot of actuals, and also budget last year, so we can do like year-on-year changes. For instance, you can see payroll year-on-year changes. So that's quite suitable for budgeting. You know, you want to get the best possible budget out of it. But what I'm just going to touch on now is forecast, but also at the end. So I've got these last three tabs here, and so I'm going to go to forecast salary, and I've got an office expenses, and then I'm going to go and just build a little UI for you can potentially build. So we really feel like we want you to focus on using this tool and how to use it. So first of all, I've got a forecast salary one here, and as you can see, I've got a waterfall chart year to date, and I've also got a sheet underneath with where I can actually enter and make changes to the data. So what's I'm just going to move this out of the way. What you'll notice though, first of all, is that everything's 100%, because the comparison we've got here up in the corner, you can see it's working budget. This is where you would start to bring in your forecast versions and use your versions to do this. So everything's set to working budget now, because we've done the year's budget. This is a January to December budget, and we haven't started yet, so everything's completely blank there. So now also see the same with the office expenses. We have a budget available, 100% budget spent, and there's a bit on travel here and some variances, and also a sheet here with expenses down at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is to move that forward to April forecast. So we're 3 months into the year. So this is something, therefore, you roll your month forward, and then the idea being that one of your business users can log in, and now we can start to see changes. So we can actually see now we've got 101%. So basically bringing in 3 months worth of actuals, and also any changes you might have made in this bottom sheet here to where you can actually add in and make changes to any of the sheets here, which the one we've got in here is a salary one. What is that? Okay, so then on my other one, more my OPEX stuff here, again, you can see some changes. I'm now at 91.6% of the budget, and also all the waterfalls now started showing. We see some variances in here. I'm at the total company level now, but what we're looking at here is something that can be good and useful for a particular department, business users. So I'm going to go down into one of my levels here, the owner of this level, and of course they'll have their own little cockpit or user interface for just their data. And what we can see here is these have changed now, because we've gone down. You see this one was over 100% before when we were at the total company level, but we're actually under budget in this department here. And we can also see that we've opened up some white space now for us to make changes. So if we are too high or too low, we can immediately come in here, edit it. We've also got 3 months worth of actuals in green come through, and we can see all those impacts there. So a lot of ability here just to drag and drop and to bring in these interfaces to enable them to help get their job done, actually do something about these. So maybe I want to increase my budget. Maybe I'm looking at some of my waterfalls here, and I can see my maintenance budget is very good. My equipment one has gone down bad, but I started here at the beginning of the year. That's my budget, and at the end of the year, it's lower. So we actually we're based on the forecast. So this end one here points to the April forecast, and this beginning one here is the budget. So it's a very useful way of giving insights, and of course this is just one of many things that you can do. So just finally, just let's say just touching on that, but I'm going to go into a UI builder where I've just got a blank one and just edit it. So I've just got a few minutes, but I just wanted to just show you a few features. So I've now just gone edit, and you can see now I've gone into a space now where I can drag and drop. And so, for instance, you can see all my different types of charts here. And I'm just going to add, first of all, a bit of text. So great thing here, you can start to instruct, put in notes, and say, please fill in, put contact details and whatnot, change the shape of it, change, if it's a bold or otherwise, and increase the size of it, and so on. So then I may want to say, right, what do I want this person to do? And let's create the one we had before. I can drag a sheet in, like so, make it bigger. And the sheet is where we can actually get things done. And over on the right-hand side, you can see we can just select the sheet we want. And this is great because, you can look at anything you want to do, like whether it's capital, you want a workspace for people to manage and plan their capital, or whether it's something around revenue or workforce. I'm going to keep it simple and go for expenses, like the last one I was on there. And that will now bring up that sheet directly into here. And you can see the sheet there. It's just a bit small at the minute. But then the other thing I would want to do is to provide some feedback to what they're doing. So I'm going to bring in a KPI chart. Bring that down a bit. Like so, drag and drop, which will be blank. And then I'm just going to bring in a waterfall chart. So just on the waterfall chart, on the right-hand side, you can see I need to add something on here, so I can add the accounts that I actually want to do. So I'm going to go, I've got access to everything, but I'm going to go straight into my expenses because that's what I'm concentrating on. And I'm going to pick up, I want to see these operating expenses, and I want to see them broken down by all these categories underneath it. So I can select that, and you can see it's immediately makes those changes. And of course, we're going from a reference value, which should be the budget, but the end one is saying 0. So I'm just going to make a change there to bring that back to the concept here of having a reference value down at the bottom here, which is from the version selector. So I don't want that from the version selector. I want that to refer to the original budget, working budget. And then I want the comparison value to be what's up here. So I don't want the actuals. I want where is it? There from version selector. And you can see there now that's starting to look a bit better. So this is probably as far as I want to go at the minute, but I think what we're trying to say here is, there's a lot of flexibility here. It's all point and click. You can see there I've just changed the axis to start from 0, how you want the legends to display, and many other things like that. And then when I'm done, I can do done, and then I can publish that to my team. So yeah, hopefully that's given you an idea there of how we can use these as a business user interface. So what I'm going to do now is to bring back our slide deck here. Okay, and we are going to head on to Bill, who's going to show us something around how how to use adaptive to do en masse changes. So I'm going to switch over into it in a sec, but over to you, Phil.
Okay, so we're calling this mass modeling, for lack of a better term, but what we're talking about is just the ability to be able to automate the update of a large amount of data without having to do it individually. And this is basically using a piece of functionality called adaptive as a data source. It came out in a prior release. Now, software companies are renowned for being really good at telling you how their new functionality works, but less good at telling you how to use and why to use this new piece of functionality, which is what I want to try and do. So adaptive as a data source came out a while back. I don't think any of us kind of twigged to what we can do with this, but we've been using it for the last few months, and as we use it, we just start to see more and more use cases for doing things with it. And the couple of really obvious ones that I'm going to talk about is being able to copy data between different planning versions. And at the moment, we don't have a lot of functionality in that respect, but we can with this. And also being able to do things like apply CPI increases or uplifting numbers en masse via a task. Do you want to just go to the next slide? Okay, so thanks. Basically, not a lot of people realise that what we have with adaptive is you've got a number of different data sources: ERP system, payroll system, operational database, and so on. They flow into adaptive, but what they're doing is first they're flowing into a staging table, and from the staging table that gives us then the chance to manipulate the data and apply mappings and so on, and from there it then flows into adaptive. What adaptive as a data source gives us is the ability to take data from adaptive itself as if it's a separate data source and feed it back into the staging table. In other words, that downwards arrow at the bottom there. So we can use adaptive's own data. You want to jump across, Phil, to make me the presenter? I'm going to try and give everybody an illustration of how we can use this.
Will do. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, so what I've got here is I've set up a series of sheets on our demo data, and I've got an expenses screen. And I choose expenses because there's a lot of accounts, and a lot of these accounts are often manually entered. We don't have driver, they're not driver based, they're not linked back to a lot of models. And if you were trying to manipulate these, you've pretty much got to do it account by account, level by level. Okay, so what I want to show you is the ability to be able to copy data between versions. At the moment, when you create a new version, that's your one and only chance to pull data. So when you create your new version, you say copy from the prior version or prior forecast and so on. And that's your only opportunity to pull data into your version. Okay, what we can do with adaptive as a data source is being able to selectively copy data from one version to another at any given time. We can rerun it at any time, at any point in time, and we can overwrite the data. And in upcoming releases, we'll also be able to erase the data as we're bringing them in as well. So what I've got here is a sheet here with from my source version that's basically got a whole pile of GL expense data. I've set up a new version, which has no data in it. Okay, you can see that there is a completely empty sheet. What I want to do is be able to just copy certain expenses across into my new version, from one version to another. I can simply do this via a task that uses adaptive as a data source to pull it out from version A and put it into version B. I'm going to run this because it's relatively quick. So I choose my destination version and I click run, and we can see it run at the bottom here. It doesn't take too long. It's about 20 seconds to run for a reasonable amount of data. And you can see that it's pulling out all of the sheets out of the data sources, out of Adaptive into the staging table, and then going straight back in and pushing it back into Adaptive. So if I come back to my empty sheet and refresh it now, what I should see is, touch wood, all of my numbers taken from my other version copied across. There we go. Okay, so that's one really handy thing, and I can do this at any point. I can choose my source data, my destination data. I don't need to choose everything. I can select my specific accounts, and I've done this via adding an account attribute. So if I come through here, and if you look, here's my expense account, and I've created an account attribute, yes, no, for mass modeling. So I can pick up certain accounts and ignore others, because some accounts might be driven by formulas and other calculations, and some might be data entered. And we want to be able to update the data entered ones. Okay, so that's one use case. Another more advanced use case is being able to provide an uplift on these accounts. So pretty much what I did was took the data out of one version, put it into another. But what if I wanted to apply a CPI increase? Okay, so with formula-driven or model-driven accounts, you generally try and put some type of an uplift or CPI increase in. For instance, pay increases on a personnel model is a perfect example. But a lot of these, if I wasn't doing that, I'd have to adjust them using the right-click adjust functionality, account by account, level by level, and it would take a fair amount of time to work my way through here. What I can do is I can set up an assumptions sheet that has this at a fairly high level, percentage increases by account group. So these are not individual accounts, they're account groups. I could build this at the account level, but it strikes me it's probably more useful to be able to do this at a higher level. Okay, you can see all the office rent accounts at 2%, expenses at 5%, and so on. What I can do now is run another task that takes this data along with my expense data, uplifts it, and puts it into my new version. So I've got a different version to do that in, which of course is empty. And what I'm going to do is go off and run a different task, which is this uplift by GL group, to do that. And again, it's pretty quick to run. So off it goes. It's getting my data, it's getting my expenses data out. It'll go and get my assumptions sheet out. There we go. And then it will turn around, marry those two together, and push it back into Adaptive for me. With some rules applied as well, because we don't want everything, we only want those that we say are applicable. So if I go back into my empty sheet and refresh, where's my refresh button going? I should be getting my data. Another way of looking at this is to view a report, and that might make it easier to view as well. So here's all my numbers again. But if I show you a report, I've got my source version, my destination version, which is empty until I run this. And then when I run it, you'll be able to see that you've got the percentage uplifts. Is it 3%, 1%? I've not chosen those guys because they're probably formula driven. And here's some others that I've excluded, and so on. A really easy way of being able to uplift your data, and you can turn around and rerun it at any time. Okay, so that's a couple of examples of how to do this. I haven't gone into the details of looking at the integrations, but certainly please feel free to contact us if you feel that there's some use cases you might want to take advantage of, and we can start adding this in for you.
Thanks a lot, Phil. That was great. So please put some notes in the chat. I mean, that was one example, uplift, but as you see there, you can use that uplift or that rule in many user definable ways. So either very granularly or very high level. So yeah, please.
I should also point out I've taken some standard sheets, but I could have used a model sheet or a cube sheet. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, which means you could use sales data, say for instance, volume data, price data, anything like that as well would be just the same principle. It's either cube data, but it doesn't have to be just general ledger data. So thanks for that, Phil. I think that's a great use case. So now we're probably going into the deepest dive one here, topic 3, with the theme. So a lot of the theme we're trying to use here is engaging infrequent users, making this easy for you to deploy this to people in a way which they actually find really easy and valuable. But one of the things we also want to do is be able to manage the process. So what we've got here is Erica, one of our consultants in New Zealand, who had a long history of working in budget processes. So she really knows this area, what the pitfalls are and what the issues are. And so I'm going to run this. So it's going to be through screenshots. So I'll hand over to you, Erica, to run us through this.
Okay, hi everybody. As Phil says, I have a long history of working in budgets processes, and this was one of my beaten wires when I was actually running budget processes in anger. So, you know, the finance department tend to be very comfortable in a system. If we can go to the next slide, Phil. Finance departments tend to be really comfortable in the system. But if you've got any kind of bottom-up process going on, then what happens is you've got a whole lot of business managers who only go into the system when it's time to do a budget or a forecast. And you know, that's only a couple of times a year, and by the time it rolls around, they've forgotten everything they learned last time. So what we tended to do is we'd create a beautiful list of manuals and instructions, and you know, there'd be a section on CapEx, and it would say, please only capitalize items over $2,000, and please enter CapEx items exclusive of GST, and this is how you enter it into the system, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it would be a work of art, and we'd put our heart and soul out in it, and we'd send it out to everybody in the who was going to have to prepare a budget, and it would be filed here. Next slide.
Right, cynical there, Erica.
Yes, it'd be filed here, and then I would spend the next 3 weeks answering phone calls from the people who had filed it very beautifully in the round file and were wanting to ask questions which they could have found on page 3 of the manual. And those were the good ones, because the other ones didn't ask the question. And you'd find that somebody had put the CapEx in, including GST, for the great big new building that you were building, and somebody else had attempted to capitalise the toaster for the staff canteen, and I'd have to spend quite a lot of time going through and cleaning up my data and weeding those things out. So really, you know, my goal was to get these people to understand what was required of them and to do it easily, but just because I'm selfish and I want to make my life easier, as well as I want to make their life easier. So there's a few things that Adaptive can do to help you with that. We move on to the next slide. So there's home pages, there's instructions on dashboards, and there's process tasks. Basically what we want to talk about today. So if we move through. And home pages. So this is your default home page. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it when you go into Adaptive. Unless you're already very clever and onto this one, this is where you end up. And this is fine if you're a finance user, because it'll tell you things like when there's new release out and etc. But for your business user who only goes in there every so often. It's not very helpful. So we have a couple of other options. So the first one is, go forward, this announcement page. So you can set up an announcement page and you can change it regularly. And you can see on here, it tells us when the due dates are, it provides links to our guidelines, etc. Just customizable, tells you customers exactly what you want them to know. And then the next one, we can also link it to a dashboard. And in this one, you can see this is the CapEx dashboard. And up the side, right where they can see it, it says, please enter items excluding GST. It tells them how to do it. And what's really good at this is that it takes them right to it. So they go in, and the first place they end up is right here. The instructions are there for them to see, and it's only relevant to what they're going to see on this column. So it just, and then we've got all these nice feedbacks, etc. that Phil was showing you earlier. And below that, there is the active dashboard and the contact information, etc. So it just means that the customer doesn't need to know where within the system they want to go. They go and it takes you right to the place that you want them to do stuff, and the instructions are all there. It makes it a lot easier. It's not a big intimidating word Bible of a manual. It's just, this is what you need to do to fill out this sheet, and we're going to go straight there. So if we move on to the next page. So you can set the home pages to be different for everybody. So the first thing you do is you go to users, modeling, model management, and you click on users. You click on the user you want to see, so, and you click edit. Edit, and then in here you can see that we get to pick a home page. So we can go in there, and the welcome is your default one, but you can go to anything you like within there. So it can be an announcement page, it can be a dashboard. If you choose dashboards, it'll ask you which particular dashboard you want to go to and which sheet within it, and you can customize that for your users. So if you've got somebody who's only going to be doing personnel budget, you can just put them to the personnel sheet and go, they're done. Just makes it a lot easier. So we move on to the next one. So the announcements, showed you an announcement earlier. So these ones, as we said, they're customizable. You can see what's on here. So you can see what's on here. Set them up to suit your particular organisation. It's done by creating HTML template, and then you alter it in Word. And if you want to implement something like that, give us a call. We can show you how to set that up. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about was process tasks. Now, you probably have seen that on your menu is this thing called process. And you may not have actually even looked at it. A lot of people don't. But what it allows you to do is create a task and then give the instructions, assign it to somebody, put instructions within it, and then monitor when it's completed. So at the top, you can see, click on Create New Task, and that will, click on that, it'll take you to a screen where you create a new task, and I think we've got that on the next slide. So we're going straight into it. So the advantages of this are, from the finance user's point of view, it's easy to track who's completed the task. So when you get into the end of your budget period and you want to chase up people, you can look in and you can see who's done it, who's working on it, who hasn't even started. So you leave the people who are working on it alone, and you phone up and give a friendly reminder to the people who haven't even started. you can also, once you've set up a task, you can roll it over. So each forecast, you just roll it over and all the tasks are already completed. You've just got to change the dates and maybe change who's, Mary's left and Hono's taken over. So we're going to assign this task to Hono instead of Mary, those sort of things. And then you send it out. You can assign tasks to a group or an individual. So it could be, for instance, all operations managers, or it could be, and in that case, you want every one of them to do it. Or you could assign it to the logistics team, and you just want one person within that team to do it. You don't care who it is, that's up to them, but you'd really kind of like to know what their production plan is for the next year. And from the cost center manager's point of view, from that infrequent user, they get an email with clear instructions, a link to the correct place, and a due date, and they can view any outstanding tasks which have been assigned to them really easily. So it just makes things simple for them as well. So this is an example of an email, and this is somebody who's only been assigned one task. So you can see that it just says what task, what the description is, who's assigned it, and the due date. And then they'll get another one, which is just a link. When they follow that link, it'll come to here. So you can see this is the sheet that comes up when you follow the link on the thing. So you can see this person has been assigned 3 or 4 tasks, and I've just opened one task there. And beside the task, you can see that is the sheet that the task is on. So this task has been linked to the personnel assumption sheet. So you've got instructions there. It says, please review the personnel assumptions and make sure they take into account the contract change from the last round of union negotiations. And then right beside it, we have the assumption sheet. So the person just needs to read that, go into here, fill out the assumptions, save, and then they can tick it as complete. And then they can look at all these other nice tasks that are there. And from the user's point of from the manager's point of view, what we can see is that we can see the number of days till target. So up there, we know we've got a countdown, which is enough to drive you mad because your life ticks away there. But you can see how close you're getting to target, whether you need to panic or not. How long does this start? You get the tasks that are running late. So a list of all the people who are past due on a task that you can then give a call and say, hey, how are you going with that? Do you need a hand? What's the problem? And you get the tasks in progress and the task complete, all in one dashboard, easy to see. And up the top, we can see the percentage completion, etc. I can flick if I want to see task assigned to anyone, which is what that is. Or if I want to drill in on anybody in particular, I can drill in and see where my business managers are at, etc.
All
So
right, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, okay. Thanks for the overview. And detailed, I said we'd do this one more detailed, and you can see there we've really gone to some depth there. So hopefully you can see that these are all actually tasks that you can set up directly in Adaptive. Literally, the help is a great thing to go to, where the little question mark is, and it will actually show you how to set these up, because everything here is click and just configure. You just click what you want to see or what you want to do, what you want them to see from the list, and that's where you can get to. So hopefully you can see there, if you're a budget administrator, how much this would improve and help and make a big difference. It's something we haven't really touched on much as well, really. So it probably needs a bit of attention now. All right, thank you, Erica. That was fantastic. Now going to another topic here. So we're just saying, focusing on one area, prepayments. So that might not sound too exciting, but when Miranda gets to it, I think you will be excited because it's a great, just taking one little topic and turning it into its own, I suppose, application. It's like a prepayments app, really, more than just here's a sheet. So this will do lots of things, and you can apply it to a lot of other areas. And again, it goes back to our active dashboard and making it easy for business users. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Miranda.
Thanks, Phil. So I'm sure we've all been dealing with prepayment expense schedules where it's multiple lines in Excel. It's hard to keep track of when one finishes, the next one starts. How are we allowing for percentage increases when a contract finishes? So I guess it's why would we want to build a prepayment schedule within Adaptive itself? So there's obviously multiple advantages. It is the ease of showing both expenses, and if you need to, we can actually show revenue within a prepayment schedule as well, and effectively link it all up so you can instantaneously see the impact on the P&L, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. Obviously, maintaining it in the one system just makes it quite a lot easier. You know, it's all information's all centrally located. It's all in the one place. Could you just click onto the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Oh, no.
Sorry.
So obviously maintaining it in the system itself is quite a lot easier. The information's right there, right in front of you. You obviously have the option of being able to export it out into Excel, but I guess we're all using Adaptive now. We all know it's quite easy to have it there on screen. It is system calculated, reduces the use for user error. We've got all of the information in there. It goes by the dates that you input. If you decide that something's going to be delayed by a month or two, obviously you've just got to go in and update the date. You don't have to worry about manually updating Excel spreadsheets to push out the date at all. And you're not relying on multiple Excel formulas, which cause an issue. So you can see here on this example here that up the top there, we've got the model sheet itself. Obviously, this is fully customizable as to what you would actually want yourself, but you can see here we've got the levels, department cost centers. We can set the prepaid type, so you can actually, if you wanted to monitor different sorts of expenses across your organisation, we can set that up as a dimension so that you can very easily keep track of different types of insurances, marketing, you know, prepaid travel. You can put in a description there. And if you keep scrolling over to the right, you can sort of see we've got a cash payment date and also expense date. So obviously you can use the cash payment date to accurately update your cash flow statement. And then the expense date itself shows when the expense will start to be expensed throughout your P&L. You can see there we've also got two columns, renew and renewal uplift. So you can very easily allow for those expenses where there's not going to be a renew. For example, prepaid travel might be a once-off. But those expenses that do get renewed year on year, like your insurance, like your Microsoft expenses and other IT expenses, very easily to show that they're renewed. And you can also put in an estimation of as to how much the uplift year on year will actually be for the increase on expenses. And again, very easy to update that. Maybe you realise that costs are being reassessed, you've renegotiated a contract with a supplier, so you would be able to update that. That then flows through down to the balance sheet and the P&L. So the balance sheet here, you could actually target how you're putting it through the balance sheet. For example, you might just have one prepaid balance sheet account. You might actually spread it out. You might have prepaid insurance and then a dumping account for all other prepayments. So it'd be very easy because you could see in the model sheet, we've got the expense types. We'd be able to target and basically put all of your prepaid office insurance within the prepaid insurance account within the balance sheet itself. And then also we can use those expense types to then target the P&L, where we'd be able to put all of those expenses in the P&L, and basically you can see there what's coming through from prepayments, and you might have other expenses, so you'd be able to keep them in line with your actual GL accounts. And then you can actually see then that the effects from the balance sheet and the P&L will then mutually come down through the cash flow statement, link into your increase or decrease in prepayments. And again, that could be tailored if for some reason you actually wanted to show the cash amounts that were going through when they're paid. And you could also just show then the prepayments themselves as they're going through for the amounts that are being expensed out. This would be able to be managed centrally by the finance team themselves, but you would also be able to give access to department cost center managers so that they could see the model sheet. They could go in and actually make changes to it. They could let you know if they've renegotiated a contract, and they could updo the manual uplift. You can see we've just had a question come through.
The question come through, and someone's asking, can we use the prepayment sheet to export data for use in a journal into the ERP each month?
Yeah, I don't see any issues with that at all. It's definitely, there's a prepayment audit sheet that can be set up so you can actually see the information there. Or if we can go on to the next slide.
Just on that as well, that same question, when we did IFRS 16 last time, lease accounting, the same thing, is there's a schedule like this, and again, it can become a journal for the actuals because it actually works the same way.
So you can see here we've actually got a web report. So it clearly shows all of the monthly expense amounts for each type of expense that we've highlighted within the system. So this is where you could be getting this data to effectively prepare your journal for upload into the ERP. And you can see that if you scroll over, we've got the initial expense there, for example, 114,000, 20,000, 200,000. Now, if you scroll over to the right, you can actually see what's happening is that the uplift is automatically being calculated on that of 5% for that first example. The next one down is 4%. So it's very much tailored to, I guess, what works for you and your contracts that you've got in place or what you expect to be happening in the future. And then we can also use that, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can also see that we've been able to put it in for subscription revenue as well. So if that's something that's happening within your business, that you can also use this for revenue. You might have a 12-month contract where you know the amounts are going to be the same each month. Again, we can build in an uplift as well for that revenue, where you might be expecting an increase or to charge on an increase to your customers each year. But again, you can see that this highlights that it can be used for both expenses and revenue. And then if we just go on to the next slide, we can also set this up as a dashboard. You can see here we've got various types of charts. We do have a cross tab in the top left-hand corner. So we can see there, I've been able to split it so it clearly shows you what is up for renewal and what is not by the yes and no columns. So you can see there that your seminar deposits are just a once off, your marketing is just a once off, but obviously all of your software costs, your insurance, they're just renewed each year, year on year. And then we've got up in the top right hand corner, we've got a waterfall to show the movements on our balance sheet. So you can see there that by the increase in the IT software, it shows us that that's when we're going to be paying for that IT software for that month. Whereas for all of the other expenses, it's obviously a decrease, so it's showing us that it's just going to be expensed each month. Just below there to the left, we've got a cash payments that's been set up for a 2-year period. So you can see sort of like, I guess, highlighting what could be probably months with higher expenses. So obviously just making sure that we keep an eye on a cash flow statement. And then we've also got a breakdown to the right of our monthly expense by expense type, so we can track where we're actually spending our money, which we can obviously see in June 2021, we're spending money on the equipment rental. Then the bottom left-hand corner, we've got a chart, monthly expense versus net value. So we can kind of be tracking, well, we've got large expenses on our P&L, but our net value is obviously declining. And then to the right of that, we can see we've got a KPI that's showing us, you know, sort of that, or that's actually the same version. But in theory, we could set that up that it's a comparison to another version. So that would show us budget compared to forecast, whether or not we're spending more, spending less. You know, obviously as we're going along and updating dates and uplift percentages and stuff like that. And then we have the link to the actual prepayments sheet itself in the sheet as well. So again, you can be going in and making live updates where you can be changing the date, you can be changing the percentage uplifts and seeing straight away what that's going to be doing to your cash and your balance sheet, and also sort of what's a yes and a no in terms of the renewal.
That's awesome. Thanks, Miranda. There's something that, like I said, there, prepayments, who would have thought that was boring? It's not anymore, but it's like an app there, and it's really not that difficult to set up. The model underneath it, of course, will be set up, but then the dashboard is kind of like up to you. Okay, so we're now going to go on to our last topic, and this is George. So please keep firing questions through if you want. If you have something, we'll get it live real time if we can. But one of the things we're getting quite a lot of is projects, and that can range from just simply tracking a project for budget purposes, or it can actually go to a project management to a certain extent. So for this one, I'm going to hand over to George. He's in our Tasmania office, so he's rugged up now, nice and warm. And yeah, over to you, George.
Thanks, Phil, and big hello to all our customers across ANZ. Thanks for joining our user group here today. And yeah, I just want to spend a bit of time looking at projects. I guess depending on how you are in your journey, where you've come and how far advanced you are, you might consider including projects as a new part of your budget process and forecasting. It's fairly simple to add on. If you've gone through the whole GL budgeting, you're looking to do more and get more engagement, and this is certainly an area we want to bring your focus into. So we're really, projects can be, OPEX projects, could be CAPEX projects, they can have revenue, they can have costs, depending on your organization, could be take on different styles. But what we're seeing is using Adaptive to capture all that information, talk to your source systems, get the data out, and have a place for someone to come in and populate their project budget, just making it just one central place for all of that management of the project forecast. So what we've seen is, different project styles, and depending on the life cycle of the project, it might be more than just your financial year. It could be a large project you're delivering. So it becomes more than just a normal budgeting thing, but it could be a lot bigger thing that we need to keep an eye on how that project's performing. So if we go on to our next slide, we'll start to look at what is a project model in its simplest form. Like, how can we use a modeled sheet to capture all this information? And here we've got an overview of what a active dashboard could look like, or workspace that we're capturing all this information. But we'd zoom in on our projects modeled sheet at the bottom. Thanks, Phil. And we'll just take a look at this format and what we've got below here. We've got a level. So this could be coming straight out of your project management system, or you may have not have one yet and you're just doing this all on Excel, and people can come directly in here and add their projects against their cost centers. And we can add things like categorizations across the top of that project to prioritize that project. You can also see there the project manager's name coming in. So that's who's assigned on that project. We've got costs here forming. So these are sort of take on the form of OPEX projects, but it could be CAPEX, it could be revenue. And we can see what's determined as the start and end date of the project. Now that might be fed in again from the source system, and the year-to-date amount. So we're bringing in real data here on the project as we go on, as we move forward in our forecast process. We've got a new forecast. This amount would update as we switch our version forward and roll forward actuals. We'd see as we go forward how much is being spent on that project, and we can compare that to actuals, budget and forecast, and keep an eye on that under/over, I guess, variance on the project to see how we're performing to what we estimated, and whether we need to reforecast these projects to, maintain within our requirements for cash flow or whatever else that might be hinging on that. So just having somewhere to come in, like what Erica had, we could have this as the default landing page for someone that's only going to use it for project forecasting, reforecasting their project cycle, and then coming in, entering that data in, and that's their monthly process. So just off to the right hand side, you can see phasing. So I mean, this is just one style of a PM, sort of a PM forecast sheet, but phasing might be we're phasing the cost into certain months using percentages, a simple direct entry into a time span on the right hand side. But we could do other things within the date brackets and have rules like 24 months or drop down. So quite a lot of flexibility around the modeled sheets, and we could add a lot more in terms of the drop downs, but just a simple overview there of a project sheet. But if we zoom back out to see how does that then interact with these other widgets and what's the process like for the person. So you can see on the left, they've got their instructions. They've been told plainly what to do. Links to other reports and documents. So we might have a policy in terms of how we rank things. We might have other information we want them to refer to, such as approving projects within the business. You might have sites set up internally for that. And we can link to reports that are within Workday or your Workday HTML reports. So there's detailed analysis on the project. So this here is a project budget consumed. So the widget there, like this will be as at that month, and it might be something that's fed integration and updated throughout the month. So we're keeping an eye on that dial as we go. And then some other analysis, we could track how the projects are going within the business across the different cost centers. But a waterfall chart would give us the breakout on how the projects are contributing to the overall uplift or decrease across the different projects that are running at the moment, and what's sort of the unders and what's the overs. So we can see office refurb quite under budget, but new product launch is going over budget. So that might be an interest, and this might form part of your monthly pack to the board or wherever else you need to report this information to. So just having it there real time, fed with integration. We might be able to go to the next slide, and I'll talk about the overall solution. So if we just jump onto that.
Very, very close to the end now.
Yep, just briefly then. So we've got our overall architecture for this would be that we've looked at the modeled sheet on the left-hand side. All of that is where we plan it, but the actuals is what we're interested in. We're pulling that into the reporting cube, which is that thing in the middle. So the reporting cube is where we service all our reports out of, from our dashboard and our Office Connect reports. That's holding both the budget and the actuals for the project data at GL code, at project ID, by PM, all those attributes that we can capture the project by, so that we can then report that information to the business, back into the business. So look, it's just an overview, and this could take on more for some customers, or it could be just a bit less and just start off by planning your projects and then worry about the actuals. But yeah, it's just something we can consider about. If you want to chat to us about it, please do. Yeah, so thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks,
We're getting
George.
close to the end, Tom. Yep.
Yeah, that was great, and hopefully, you know, that's just really shows, hopefully in a nutshell, like George said there, from very simple OPEX type projects within a budget to something which integrates, synchronizes with underlying data, provides a great way for, and just going to the theme of this, which is to get people outside of finance being able to use it and actually having like an app that they can manage. You see that through the prepayments, through the projects, and then Erica's showing us how we can make it easy for business users through the use of guided homepages, announcements, and for finance to be able to have a great overview of the whole process, who's doing what, when. And then Phil's one at the beginning there with the mass changes there to be able to uplift and down and you know, use assumptions or rules to change data and move it, copy it from one place to another, which is a new capability. And just at the beginning, I was just highlighting the active dashboards in this. So So that's the end of our, so please send through any questions. And at the end of this, when we close, there will be a little survey. We just want to know what you'd like, what you prefer not to see less of or more of, whatever it is. And then we'll have another one somewhere around September when the new version's coming out. And otherwise, yeah, we hope that was a great session. I'm really happy with the, hopefully you saw some great things that can be done there, which isn't a massive project to do. Please feel free to engage with us if you need some assistance in some of these areas. So we'll sign off here towards the end. So thanks very much for your time, and as I say, please stay on. You're going to get an email with a recording as well. So if you'll be able to see that as well. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.